Hi, everyone, and welcome to Co-Founders Lab Accelerator. We have a special bonus Friday session with renowned leadership coach Lenore Champagne Byrne, who's a really good friend of mine and is very experienced in venture capital, but has also recently started working with founders specifically on leadership skills, how to build a great business, how to work with people. So, Lenore, how are you? We're so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erica. I'm really excited to share this presentation with you today. I'm doing great, and I can't wait to dive in. And I'm happy to answer any questions you all have if you put them in the chat. But what I want to share with you today is a framework for planning anything. But I'm specifically encouraging you to use it to plan, obviously, the business that you are working on through Co-Founders Lab. And what I'm going to do today is give you a step-by-step framework to use for planning, but it's something that you can adapt for other things in your life. And I encourage you to dive in during this hour, but then to come back to it later and give it your full attention in a really comfy, quiet place and really flesh it out. So we're going to fly through the framework, and then I encourage you to keep working on it on your own.
That's great. Well, everyone is going to have access to the recording and slides, so you can, obviously take it in now, but then go back and, really focus on specific areas that were important to you. So, Lenore, just FYI, I will be managing people raising their hands, asking questions. I just want to remind everybody in the audience that we love to hear your beautiful voices. You can put your questions in through the question box, which I will then, alert Lenore and read the question for you, but we love it if instead you raise your hand and I will unmute you and you can ask your question directly to her, and it's a little bit more conversational. Great, so Lenore, I will step out and just be supporting you in whatever you need, and you can get started with the presentation.
Awesome, thanks, Erica. Okay, so this is your step-by-step guide to building your dream written by you. I'm going to be your guide through writing it today. So let's jump in. A little bit of background. I run something called Bright Coaching. I coach people who are running businesses or transitioning out of the corporate world and into entrepreneurship. And some background at the bottom, a lot of my training is through the MBA program at NYU Stern, and I also am a graduate of a coach training program called Accomplishment Coaching. There's two commitments that I'm going to ask you to make today as you go through this process. The first one is to stretch yourself. You've probably heard people say that magic really happens outside of your comfort zone. There are parts of this planning process that will feel a little uncomfortable and will probably challenge you to think about things in a way that you wouldn't typically, and I'm asking you to just allow a little bit of discomfort. The second commitment is to take care of yourself. So if you notice that something's just really not comfortable for you, or you're really confused or frustrated or stuck, I ask that you get what you need, whether that's by raising your hand, as Erica mentioned, or jotting it down and following up later. I'm going to assume you all are okay with that and move on to the first step of this framework. Okay. So step one is to set a very specific goal, a SMART goal. You've probably heard that acronym before. It stands for specific, measurable, actionable, specific, measurable, actionable, result-oriented, and time-bound. But another way to think about it is, what specifically will you create by when? So I'd love if someone was willing to share what their SMART goal is. Something that you want to accomplish by a specific time.
All right, let's see if we have any brave souls.
Yeah.
Might have to call on somebody.
Okay.
Oh, wait, we've got Manoj. Here we go. Thank you, Manoj. Hey, Manoj, go ahead. We unmuted you.
Okay. Specifically, what will you create and by when? Okay, so by April 5th, I will have a working prototype of a following machine.
Nice. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Manoj, can I ask you, is that a step on the way to a bigger goal?
Yes,
What's
it's
the
a
bigger
step.
goal? Mm-hmm.
The bigger goal is to uh, find a customer that sees the potential and the need for the technology that I built.
Okay. And what's the even bigger goal after you found that customer?
Is to sign a contract where they fund a joint development exercise uh, for, uh, for building a machine, putting the technology to work.
Nice. Okay. So for you, Manoush, and for anyone else who's listening, this framework works really well for a goal that will happen over the next 6 months to 1 year. So you don't want something that you know exactly how to do or exactly all the ways it's going to come together. You want something that feels a little bit far in the future. By contrast, it's not your 5-year plan. It's not like take over the world with this new technology. It's something that feels attainable but feels a little bit further than clear to you. So Manoush, I would encourage you to make your SMART goal that actually having that joint development project up and running.
Okay,
Are you on board with that?
perfect.
Okay. So for anyone else who's working through their SMART goal, use that as a model. You're looking not for the next thing that you want to accomplish, but for something that you hope to see happen in the next 6 months to 1 year. It should feel like a relatively big goal. And Manoush, I'm going to pick on you just a little bit more. You said that you'll have the joint development project up and running, and let's assign a specific date, not just a month, but a month and a day to that.
April would be too aggressive, I think, because
Yeah.
I need to find the person. Let us say by July end, which is July 31st.
By July
Uh,
31st, you will have your joint development project up and running.
yeah, a contract signed,
Mm-hmm.
and that we are on, and I am basically looking for people along with all the partners I have, but I'm looking for people who can make it happen with me.
Awesome. So that's a perfect example. What you just said about the contract being signed, that's a perfect example of the metric to build in. Like your goal shouldn't feel amorphous here. It should be have a contract signed for X project by Y date. So nice work, Manoush, and all of you get your goal that specific, and with an actual calendar date attached to it. One thing to be aware of is we usually get pretty uncomfortable at this step because we're like, well, I don't know exactly how it's going to happen or exactly what day it will happen on. The idea here is just to give yourself something to shoot for. It's a measuring stick. And I'll remind you through this process, but you're making these rules. So if something changes, you can adjust the rules, right? But we want to start out with a very specific target so that we know what we're aiming for. Okay. The next piece is something it's one of my favorite tools as a coach, and it's something that I really encourage you to dive into on your own after this session, and I'm going to give you a little bit of time to do it now as well. So once you have a very specific goal, the next step is a big, juicy future vision. Backing up a little, what you'll probably notice about yourself, and you might see in other people you've worked with, is that most people are either really good at the day-to-day logistics planning, they get details, or they're really good at the big visions, big ideas. What this framework challenges you to do is bring those two things together. And for most people, one or the other part is going to feel uncomfortable. So if you know exactly what to produce by a certain time, then step one probably felt okay for you, and step two might feel a little woo-woo and crazy. And the reverse is also true. Again, just lean into the discomfort and see what you can do, what you can actually do here. So the question to ask yourself is, what will your life look like in the moment when your goal is realized? So if you're on your computer or in your journal, write down everything that you can think of that will be true at that moment. And this should feel really exciting. It should actually make you feel really connected to your goal. It should maybe even give you goosebumps. It should make you smile. This is something I encourage you to come back to over and over again, because when you can get really detailed and vivid about what's possible when you achieve your goal, it will actually pull you towards your goal. It's like putting a magnet in the future that brings you to it, and it makes the hard work of accomplishing the goal feel a little bit lighter because you're connected to the big why. So take a few minutes to jot down some ideas there, and feel free to raise your hand if you have a question about this. I'm going to mention for you a lot of the time, this big juicy vision sometimes doesn't feel that exciting. And when it doesn't feel exciting, one thing to consider is that your first step, your SMART goal, might not be ambitious enough. You might have set a goal that is very predictable for you. The idea behind this framework is to set a goal that's possible but will stretch the bounds of what's normally predictable. So if this second step is falling flat for you, go back and look at step one and see what you might add to it or build in that will actually make it feel like the stakes are higher and there's something more exciting going on.
Ruth
Anyone
has
want to?
sorry. Ruth has something that she'd like to say.
Great.
Oh, I just wanted to ask you to please repeat the question, what we're supposed to write down. I didn't quite get that.
Sure. So the thing to write down is how will your life look in the moment when your goal is realized? And I want you to be hyper specific. What will you be wearing? Who will be around you? What will you be feeling like? What will happen right before the goal is realized? What are you going to do later that day? I mean, really put yourself in that moment. Ruth, does that answer your question?
Okay.
Any other questions or reactions?
Not right now, so we can go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so once you get excited about your goal and feel really connected to it, we will start to look at some practical stuff, the resources that you'll need. So I encourage you to make a chart that looks like this. The people and things. This first column will be things that you already have. The second column will be things that you need to get. So for people, you might already have someone like a developer, and you could list that. Or you might already have someone who can provide accountability support for you. Or you might already have someone who encourages you and really gets your vision. People that you might need to still get access to might be a business co-founder or a mentor in a specific industry. Take the time to fill this chart out in as much detail as you can. Do the same thing with the things, right? So the things are like, what are all the things you might need? You might need a certain software program. You might need access to a certain technology or tool. List all the things that you can think of. And if you're worried that we're making this list of things that you don't have yet, and you don't know where you're going to get them, don't worry. We'll come back to those a little bit later in the framework. One thing to keep in mind is that the list of people who are ready to support you in achieving your vision is always longer than it feels at first. So if you've got like 3 people or 5 people, know that you can probably get 20 onto that list. I'm going to go back to the people slide so you can see what's here. But essentially, your list of people is your opportunity to assemble your team. It's your opportunity to figure out who's going to actually walk with you in the realization of this goal. So you can ask yourself, who's invested in seeing you realize this goal? And then in terms of the people that you still need to make contact with or get to support you, you can ask yourself, who do you still need to enroll in accomplishing this? One thing to consider is that for people that you still need to enroll, people that you still need to convince that this is a great idea and that they should get on board, the stronger your number 2 activity was, the future vision, the more likely you'll be able to enroll people. People get excited about those big ideas. And so your enthusiasm there is going to translate to other people. As I showed you in this chart, you list the people that you have and need to get. You also list the things that you have and need to get. So questions to ask yourself about things are, what do you have at your disposal to make this happen? And what do you still need to get access to? Any questions about this?
It looks like we're all good.
Okay. The next piece is to build in rewards. You're going to be accomplishing something big, right? Like you're working on a major project. And so what I encourage you to do is build in opportunities to acknowledge yourself for your progress towards the goal. So back to the example that Manoush gave, when he first has a working prototype in April, that's something that he can acknowledge and celebrate. I'll give you a little bit of background about how clients typically react to this step in case it's useful because maybe you're feeling the same way. So some clients feel like there's nothing worth acknowledging till the last step. I didn't accomplish anything yet, so I don't really need to pay any attention to the rewards along the way. And something to bear in mind when you think about that is that you might find yourself never feeling satisfied with any of the results you create if you're not willing to acknowledge the steps along the way. If that feels familiar to you and you want to chat more about it, let me know. Another thing that people have sort of a reaction to here is, okay, so I reward myself if I do something good. Does that mean I have to punish myself if I don't hit a milestone? If that sounds like you, the answer to that is absolutely not. There's no punishment here. You're really just working towards this because you want to. So the punishment is that you didn't get what you wanted to get done, right? So, so the rewards I find really serve people in terms of a way to keep them in action and motivated. And also, if they're not serving you, it's interesting to think about why. Like, what's your resistance to acknowledging your progress? Backing up, what do I mean by rewards? Rewards mean whatever they mean to you. So I find it's usually useful to break rewards into 3 categories: small rewards, medium, and large. And assign a dollar amount to each of those categories. Whatever your budget says small, medium, and large means, it doesn't matter what anyone else's is, it just matters what it means to you. And I would, for now, have, like, say, small rewards, say for you, are going to be between $30 and $100. Then write down a few things that could fall into that category. Then move to medium rewards. Attach a dollar amount, and then write down a few things that can fall into that category, and then large. So let's say you get 3 things for each category for now, and we'll come back to these rewards later on. I'm going to just give you a minute to jot that down. Okay. Do you all have any questions before we move into the next part? Because if you're not with the framework so far, this next step is going to feel really burdensome. So we have plenty of time, and I encourage you to ask any questions that you might have about how this is going for you so far.
We've got another one from Manoush, so I will unmute him. Hi, Manoush.
Hi, Erica. So reward is a reward is just seeing your dreams materialize. Is that a reward, or is it something more than that?
I encourage you to actually give yourself a something else. So a reward. So what do you like to do, Manoush?
Build stuff.
You like to build stuff. Okay. What would you do if you had a whole Saturday totally free and you had just finished building an amazing product? What would you do?
Oh, play with my son.
Play with your son. Okay. So it might be for you that it really feels like a reward to just carve out 2 hours just to play with your son, to do nothing but play with him. That's a totally fair reward. Other people might want to go get a massage, right? Or buy themselves a bag or some shoes or go out to a nice dinner. You get to decide what the rewards are, and it's not going to be the same for you as for anyone else. So it's whatever feels like a treat. It should just feel like a treat to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and I love that idea, of even, allocating some time for yourself, because it's basically just an opportunity for you to celebrate the accomplishment and to sort of, I think in business, it's so great to step back and realize, what you've achieved. And even though this seems a little like, do I really need to do this? It actually helps because one of the things that I've noticed too in business a lot is that you're constantly making progress, but very few people take time to acknowledge all the things that they've actually set out to do that they've accomplished. You're so focused on the forward goal. So implementing something like this can help kind of maintain the energy that you have to keep progressing towards your ultimate goal. Michael has one more question. So, hi, Michael.
Yeah, I really like the division of small, medium, large rewards. Because thinking back kind of the early days of my career, and I've worked with multiple managers that as soon as you would accomplish something like bring them a big sale or something like that, it would be, okay, what's next, right? It would not even be a pause for a moment to say, hey, great job. One really successful manager I've seen, and I've duplicated this in some of my teams, is like after a successful cold call, like an entry into an account, just keep a small piece of candy around the office or ring a bell, or, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money to reward people, but you can create that environment and atmosphere of awarding. So just, yeah, I really like that. It's really good advice.
Yeah, great. I mean, just looking at what Erica just said and what you just said, it really is an opportunity to just pause for a moment and acknowledge what you've done. And it's funny because people often think that rewards are a waste of time or that celebration is a waste of time, which is what you've seen in those managers, Michael. But when we don't reward ourselves, it's really a short-term gain in that actually keeps us out of the longer-term game, right? It's like we think we're saving a little time by not stopping and acknowledging our progress, but we actually can't continue, and as Erica said, keep our energy up in the longer term if we don't take those pauses. So yeah, awesome advice. I'm glad that connects for both of you. And go
We
ahead.
have another question. I'm not sure if it's Andrew or his wife who's logged in, but
Hi,
who is it? Hello?
it's Hillary.
Oh,
Can
hi,
you
this
hear
is
me?
Hillary. Sorry, she's always logged in under her husband's name. So
I
go
am
ahead,
sorry.
Hillary.
No worries. And Andrew's actually this interesting was one of my questions for you later. But he's my husband. He was my husband. We're no longer married, but we are in business together still. And I have to say, like, this is more of a comment, but for me, it's more of a time budget than a money budget. Like budgeting that time for myself has been challenging, I would say. Like just the money part is almost secondary to finding the time. So I really appreciate that you have commented on that, because for me it's as little as like a steam and sauna for myself in the morning, or just like, I don't know, taking time to drink water first thing, like those little, like 3 minutes, it seems almost impossible sometimes, 20 minutes. But yeah, so anyway, super appreciate you. And seeing that as a milestone is lovely. That definitely puts it into perspective for me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's one thing I want to just say kind of in reaction to that, besides thank you for sharing what you said. I think what you said is very relatable for a lot of people. One thing to think about as you think about rewards, is can you truly say that your accomplishment of a major step on the way to this big goal is only worth, is not worth 2 minutes of, if you look at it as a transaction, right? There's no way you could say that, right? And so if you're having trouble carving out the time, and it is typically a time issue versus a money issue, if you're not allowing yourself the time, one thing to take a look at is, are you really assigning and owning the value that your time in other ways has? Because you're really producing a lot of value, a lot of results. And so there's no reason to kind of keep the impact so closed. You can open it up and let yourself enjoy all of it, right? Thank you so much, Hillary, for saying that.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hillary. I also think it's just sort of good leadership training, which is that in a startup, you're technically your first employee. So you create a culture even by the way that you treat yourself. So if you're treating yourself with respect and gratitude, you're going to be able to extend that to the rest of your team once you actually start building your team. Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you, Erica. That's such a great point. From a coaching perspective, we often say that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you have no compassion for yourself or real appreciation for what it took to make that cold call successful, Michael, or to make a sale, right? Then as you rise in your levels of leadership, that is reflected in the way that you manage. That's a great point, Erica. Thank you. Oops. Okay. I'm going to move on to milestones because they become, this part gets a little bit like heady, and so it'll take us a few minutes, and I'm here to support you through it. But I know this is kind of a silly image. It's Merlin, and if you know the story of why Merlin might be relevant here, it's because he knew the future, and then because he knew the future, he didn't have a lot of doubt about what would happen between now and then, and it didn't matter so much what the path was because he knew the end of the story. What I've just asked you to do by telling you to write down what exactly you'll create by when in the future is to have faith that that thing in the future is going to get created. And then what we're going to do is work backwards from the future to the present. This is almost definitely different from how you typically make your plans. If I asked you to write a plan, you will normally start today and work forward in time. That's just the way our brains are trained to do it. What we're going to do instead is work backwards from your last goal. So so you've got your SMART goal written down. Underneath your SMART goal, write down the thing that needs to happen, the next thing that feels like a major milestone before you accomplish that major goal, and assign a date to that. Let me know what questions you have. I know this concept gets tricky, so let me know what questions you have. I can also give you an example. The easiest way to talk about this is weight loss. It's just a simple thing to think about. This is not what I imagine you're probably working on, but let's say that you wanted to lose 10 pounds by the end of next month, in 8 weeks or something. Is that even healthy? Probably not. Okay, but let's say you wanted to lose 10 pounds in 10 months, right? Just to really oversimplify this. If you wanted to lose 10 pounds in 10 months, that would be your SMART goal. The month before that, you might say at 9 months, I should be weighing 9 pounds less. At 8 months, 8 pounds less. So you're just backing into it. I was intending for that to make it clearer, but if it made it more confusing, I apologize. Let me know what questions you have. You should be working backwards in time till you get to today.
All right, no questions so far.
Okay, that part takes some time. Two things to keep in mind as you do it. Number one, we talked about thinking about what's predictable versus what's possible. I encourage you to keep that in mind as you do this. Don't go with exactly how it's gone in the past. Go with the ideal scenario so that you're working towards the thing that you actually want. And the second piece here is sometimes this part just feels really stressful and you might need a partner. So it might be helpful to you, if you don't finish it while we're talking today, it might be helpful to you to go back with someone who's really good and organized with dates to help you think through this reverse milestone plan. But I do really encourage you to do it backwards, to work backwards in time. Is anyone clear already on what their, is anyone all the way up today with your milestones yet?
I think people might need like a little bit more time kind of outside of this session probably to complete that part of it. But some good guidance might be, how many milestones you think you should aim for.
So I said earlier that the goal is usually a 6 to 12 month goal. It should feel a little bit far off. The milestones typically happen about every month. That said, when you're doing something like what Manoush shared, it's not going to be at regular intervals. So you'll have milestones. Some of them will be a few weeks apart, and some of them will be maybe a month or even 2 months apart, and that's okay. So there can be irregular intervals between your milestones. I would say in a goal that's 6 to 12 months out, you'll probably have at least 5 milestones. And you don't want the milestones to be a to-do list. You want them to be the result of a lot of little actions. So if you think about a milestone shouldn't be something you can do today. It should be something that takes at least a few weeks to accomplish. Another way to think about what qualifies as a milestone is your milestone should be the effect of a lot of little causes, and you're going to write down some of those causes, some of those smaller, more granular action steps in the next step. Just let us know if you don't understand this concept, and otherwise we'll move on to the next step.
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay. So there's our Merlin. Okay. Step 7 is an action plan, and we're actually nearing the end of this, so we'll have time to go through other questions and comments that you have. In terms of the action plan, once you've backed into once you've finished your reverse milestone plan and moved all the way back in time to today, you're going to have a milestone that's coming up soon. And what a lot of people find when they work backwards in time is that they should have already started. Like their first milestone is much faster approaching than they thought. That's all fine. What you want to do is start today and then, in the normal way of planning, work forwards. So what exactly do you need to accomplish in order to hit your first milestone? So on the slide, as you can see, step by step, how will you hit milestone 1? This should feel more like a to-do list or an action plan. And what I encourage you to do is assign a date to every action step so that you know how you're going to hit it. When you get closer to milestone 2, plan for milestone 2. So what's different about what I'm asking you to do is don't create a very, very granular action plan for the whole goal. It's not going to work because there are too many things that are going to change between now and then. What you're able to really plan for is your first milestone. Focus all your energy on achieving that first thing. And as you get closer, you can set out your action plan for the second goal and then for the third and on and on. Do you guys understand that concept?
Great. Michael has a question.
Great.
Yeah, so in the startup mindset, everything's so fast-paced and moving. We want milestones done like tomorrow. But how do you find the balance between setting that date far enough out that it's attainable, and also when you get to that date and maybe you haven't completed that milestone, how do you reorganize, reassess, not get demotivated, that type of stuff?
Those are great questions. So I do think that in some forms of startup culture, everything feels like an emergency, right? This is a great way actually to step back and say, what's the essence of what really needs to be accomplished? So if you look at your product roadmap, there might be a certain feature or a certain kind of add-on that you feel like needs to get created right away. But when you take a step back, you might realize what I'm really trying to do, though, is create a certain functionality of this product. So the functionality in that case, the achievement of that functionality should be the milestone, and the action plan would comprise all of the little steps that you might accomplish, like so coding something new, testing it out, all those would be action steps. To your second question, when you don't hit, I'm saying when, not if, right? Because you will not hit all your milestones on time. That's just like the way that the world works, right? So when you don't hit a milestone, you look at what the next milestone should be, and create a new action plan such that you will hit that next milestone. So let's say you're not going to hit milestone 1. It's just not going to happen by the date you planned. Look at how you can still hit milestone 2. If it all feels like too much has changed, there's just no way this is going to happen, there are 2 pieces of advice I have for you. Number 1, get support in that moment. Speak with someone else who can help you brainstorm about how to keep the integrity of the larger plan that you have. And number 2, remember that this is your plan, you created it, and you get to make the rules, right? So make the adjustments you need to make so that you can stay in action. Don't let not having hit your milestone take you off the plan entirely and just like, oh, forget it all. Does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah, it does. And kind of a follow-up to that is, you know, the same thought process when you're setting milestones for people under you, right? If you misproject the date, if you get in the habit and you misproject dates, right, and they continuously miss milestones, how do you prevent them from thinking it's okay to miss milestones?
Yeah, so there's a difference between it being okay, like you're not fired, you're not in trouble, versus we accept that it happened and we move on. I'm encouraging you to look at it as we accept that it happened and move on, with the caveat that we often believe that processes have to happen in a certain way, and therefore we think we know how long they take. If you're consistently missing milestones, there's a bigger question, right? Is there a more effective way to approach this process or create the same outcome? Secondarily, is this person not capable of accomplishing this? Like, is it working in other parts of the organization and this particular person maybe isn't in the right role? So I would look at both of those places. The key here is to know what the big picture is so that you can constantly adjust that small picture, because the small picture is always in flux in a startup anyway. And so if we back all the way up, what I'm telling you is there are outcomes that you need to remain committed to, but you have to be able to let go of exactly how they're going to come to pass and be willing and flexible to be changing the plan along the way, both for you and for the people under you. Another thing to put in, Michael, is if you're setting milestones for a person that you're managing, I would actually encourage you to enroll that person in that planning as much as possible. People do a much better job of executing a plan that they have ownership over. They will get more creative, more engaged, and more enthusiastic if they feel like they have some agency over why they're shooting for what they're shooting for. So it shouldn't be a fight. Like, they shouldn't be saying, oh, I only think I can do 3 and you need me to do 10. It's not like that, but I'm asking you to collaborate on the milestone setting.
Good advice, thank you.
Any other questions about this piece, the action planning piece? Okay. The last thing to do is to figure out how specifically you'll reward yourself when you hit each milestone. So this should feel kind of fun, right? Because you've got your categories of rewards, small, medium, and large. You've got your milestone plan. And then what you can do is say, okay, when I hit milestone 1, I'm going big. I'm giving myself a large reward. Maybe it's a whole day off. Maybe it's spending, however much is your large reward category, whatever it is. You might go big on your first one. And then you say, when I hit milestone 2, that one feels like a medium-sized reward. It doesn't, this is arbitrary. It's whatever it feels like to you. You decide, just assign a small, medium, or large to each milestone along the way. And you might notice that there are some action steps that actually feel like a big deal to you. So if there's an action step that really is kind of a small thing, but it feels like let's say that one action step for you is to go pitch a certain investor. If you just feel so nervous about pitching and this investor feels high stakes and you have to get a lot of support for it, reward yourself for that one too, right? So I'm asking you to attach rewards to milestones, but don't hesitate to put rewards on action steps that feel like a big deal. You guys got that one?
Looks like we're good.
Okay. I have some general tips about this, and some of these came up during our conversation, but I'll go over a few. The first one is to get support. It's amazing how differently you'll see things when you have a person playing devil's advocate, a person encouraging you. We often get single-mindedly focused on, okay, this is exactly how this is going to go, and this is what the plan is, and this is what needs to happen. And sometimes just having someone ask you questions can change that whole landscape and give you access to many more ideas and many more possibilities. I really encourage you to use things like Co-Founders Lab, like your co-founders, like the people around you, your mentors, your advisors, maybe you have a coach. Use those people to in this planning process. And even more importantly, especially for those of us who aren't great at rewarding ourselves along the way, also build in times where the people, just people in your life outside of your work, can celebrate with you, right? Your work isn't a singular entity that's insulated from the rest of your life. It's integrated. So act that way. Like act as such, and let people celebrate you, build with you, and support you. That's tip one. Tip two is back to the second step. And we were kind of just getting warmed up then. You guys, do not underestimate the power of that second step, that future vision. Clients who really dive in and make a big, really moving future vision for themselves actually feel pulled towards their goal by that vision. And like I said, use that vision as a way to pitch investors or to hire people who might, like be really high talent, really exciting people that they can't pay very well. Like you can enroll people from that place. So dive into that. And I would even say, so write it out, as I mentioned, do a journal entry, but also even make a visual of it. If you're a visual person, draw it or collage it or whatever works for you, but look at it as often as you can and stay connected to the big, big why. The third tip is revise when you need to. Things won't go as planned. You already know that. You are the boss in this situation. You get to make the rules. So be willing to say, it's not working, revise, and move on. What questions do you have?
All right, if folks don't have specific questions, but maybe are interested in, sharing a little bit about their experience with kind of their progress. So, I know that some of you have been working on your businesses for a while. Were there, certain things that were challenges for you in terms of actually getting things done and meeting your milestones that you'd like to share?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have some info from Matt. Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
Hey,
Hi, Lenore.
Hi.
So I guess to your comment, Erica, milestones that we had. So
And
Lenore,
Matt,
our
maybe you could
business,
tell Lenore a little bit about what your business is.
yeah. So we connect customers on the beach with local restaurants and deliver food from those restaurants to people on the sand.
Got it.
We're about to launch in Rockaway Beach this year. We tried out our service last year towards the end of summer, which brings me to, I guess, what would be one of our first milestones, which was getting the technology developed. We're not technical ourselves, so we had to outsource that development to a team in India. And it took about 6 months. So that was big for us when we actually had the product in our hand and ready to use. That being said, we didn't really celebrate it, and we probably should have at the time because it came in about a month and a half later than expected, and we missed out on about a month of good business at Rockaway Beach because it's seasonal here in New York. So I think we could have celebrated that. Actually, I do have a question.
Okay.
On milestones. So the number one milestone is your big one. So I guess ours would be to be active in 3 beach communities by the end of summer. So Rockaway Beach would be one, Fort Myer, Florida, and San Diego. That's like the big one we're going for. And then number 2 would be maybe to break it up into segments, like, okay, by say August 1st will be in San Diego ready to go, and September 1st will be in Fort Myer, for example. Is that how you're
Yeah.
suggesting to break it up?
Yes. So I will first address the first thing that you said about the milestone that didn't go as planned. When it gets accomplished, I do still encourage you to celebrate it. It was still a big deal, and it did still allow your company to move forward. So I'm with you. Yes, I think that's an opportunity to celebrate. And I would even say it's not too late to just, with your team, take stock of the progress you've made. So that's part one. Part two, yes, you could have your SMART goal be to be active in 3 beach communities. I would challenge you to make that a little bit more specific and either attach a revenue figure to each beach community or define in some other way what active means. So is that a certain number of restaurants on the platform? Is that a certain number of customers who have made deliveries, unique users, whatever it might be? Decide what your metric is and use that in your SMART goal. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the clearer you can get, and this is for everyone, the clearer you can get about what exactly is the most important thing to measure, the easier it will be to course correct along the way. If the goal is a certain number of dollars, you will have a different problem-solving solution than if the goal is a certain number of people or if the goal is a certain number of restaurants. And my suspicion is that they're all important in this case, but you want to always know what the highest order priority is so that you can align your actions with that. So yes to the way that you laid out the timing. You know, it might be beach by beach, but also make it more specific.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you for your question. Thanks for sharing what you're up to. Who else has something to talk about?
And I'm sure some of you might have some ideas. Michael. Hi, Michael.
I know I keep raising my hand here, but leadership has always been such a topic of interest for me.
It's very important.
So what are your thoughts on the use of like personality assessments for team building? Like, for instance, there's a ton out there, you know, Strength Finders. I think Co-Founders Lab initially had an assessment built in at one point. What's your thoughts on using those to build a team out?
Yeah, so sorry, to build your team?
To help with the team building and kind of team synergy aspect of things.
Got it. The big picture answer for you on that is that the more you know, the better. So yeah, if you can have people know their work styles and have you as their manager know what each person's strengths are, that's fantastic. The Strengths Finder is a good one. There are all different ways of classifying, and I really think the most important thing is to find a system that's aligned with your corporate culture. So, for example, at Google, they have a categorization by color. They say there are reds, yellows, greens, and blues, and they have a set of personality attributes that align with each color. And then people engage with their teams according to color. You can use any of the systems that are out there. If Co-Founders Lab has one, I mean, obviously use that. If not, I think even just I think the most important thing is to have that conversation. And I would say it's less important exactly what the tool is. But yes, once you are willing to say who you are and how you work, you can relate to your employees in a more powerful way and also leverage their strengths better. So I absolutely think it's worthwhile.
Cool, thanks.
Sure.
And just to follow up on that, you guys are a bit early for this now, but certainly this is something I've experienced as we've been building our team, which is that as you add new hires and a team is growing, it's so difficult for folks to know anything about the people that are coming on board. So for example, for Co-Founders Lab Accelerators, I had our director of operations supporting, and you guys have had experience with Kasha. She, uploads the links and sends the emails and does, make sure that you guys get all the information that you need. And we just hired a new customer support person who's going to replace her. And, yes, he's new. He's only been here for a couple of weeks and he's in training. But, I realized, I don't really know who this person is, right? I don't know anything about them. It would make sense. And as new people are getting added, it'd be wonderful to, have some scalable way to kind of get to know a little bit about employees that are adding the team. So not only for you as the manager to kind of understand them a little bit better, but also for the other members of your team to understand, who this person is, what's great about them, what excites them, rather than each person kind of having to go through the exercise of finding it out over months, on their own.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I just thinking back through my experience, I find that most of these are kind of like a language. We could probably tell each other all this stuff about ourselves anyways, but these just kind of give us a language to communicate and make it okay to communicate in that way, about personalities when team members have kind of one-on-ones and talk about their results and that type of thing. So, yeah, interesting.
One of the benefits of having that shared language is that it doesn't have to feel so heavy, right? Like there's nothing wrong with being a certain way, or like there's not a preferred strength to have, right? They're all useful in their own right. So I find that sometimes people get very nervous around these conversations where they define who they are and their work styles. But yes, the shared language really helps people kind of loosen up, and it makes it like to use the Google example, you could laugh in a meeting and be like, oh, you're a red, there it is, because you have the shared language and everyone owns who they are. So it doesn't feel so personal, actually.
Great, thank you. Well, we only have time for maybe about one or two more questions. I know some of you guys haven't had a chance to give your feedback yet. So, Charu, Julio, Ruth, Sunil, Yoshi, if you guys have some thoughts, Katchen, if you have some thoughts or some challenges they're going through, particularly Katchen, I know you've got a lot of things on your plate. If you'd like to, chat about any of your upcoming milestones or challenges with, getting your plan done and bringing the resources that you need on, would love for you guys to take this minute to raise your hands. Great, we've got Ruth. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, Ruth.
All right, so this has been great. I think for me personally, I really struggle with setting milestones because so I work full time, and I'm doing this, and it's a ton of work. I'm the only person working primarily on it, and I have 2 kids. So my milestones seem to be like really far out, and I know that if only I could just quit my job, I would be able to achieve all these things faster. So I keep wondering, is there a point where people get that you're just taking on too much psychologically, that you just need to decide to focus on just the startup or something else in life, right? How do you know what to give more time to? I guess is the question that I have.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. Second, only you know, and you do know. So I can't tell you, like no one can tell you how you're feeling, how your energy feels, where your time is best spent. No one knows your family, no one knows your job, no one knows your startup better than you. So trust yourself and listen. That said, I do think that's a great thing to talk through with someone to allow yourself to really explore it. Yes, so many clients want to quit their job and start something. But I'll give you an example with one client because I think it's worth illustrating one thing I mentioned earlier, which is sometimes you have a really big goal. There's a big reason, Ruth, why you're doing what you're doing. Like with 2 kids and a job, you don't have to be working on this project. There's a really big reason why. Do you know what that reason why is, the thing that you want to accomplish?
Yeah. So for me, I want to change people's lives. I want to make a big impact on my community, and that's my big driving force.
Got it. So the clearer you can get about the really big picture vision, why do you want to do this? What's at the heart of this thing that has you working and stretching yourself so thin? If you can step back and look at that and ask yourself, what is the straightest path to that? Is it to quit my job and trust that we'll figure the money out? Is it to focus only on saving now so I can quit my job and dive into the startup? Is it to scale back my work on the startup and actually just volunteer with an organization that is doing what I'm doing? I'm just saying all these because what you'll notice when you can see the highest order objective is that there are infinite possibilities along a spectrum to achieve it. So you might find that you're able to scale back your work to a contract and work 30 hours a week and create more time. Like, there are infinite possibilities if you can focus on the biggest objective. And the specific answer to your question is yes, people run out of time and get exasperated, and it's in that moment that they decide that they're going to change something, and it sounds like you're coming up to that place.
Great. We have time for one more comment or question from Katchen. Hi, Katchen.
Hi there. How are you?
Okay.
Well, no, I was just talking. You were asking about, some of the major milestones. Some of the things that I had to go through were, evaluating different software packages, finding branding help, finding developers to help. I think a lot of the same things that everybody else has gone through. What I haven't really set out is the bigger pieces that Lenore was talking about, the SMART goals, and looking 6 months to a year. I feel like right now I'm still stuck in the next 2 to 4 weeks, or even 1 to 2 months. Just to back up, Lenore, my company is Fofit, which is an online vacation rental that is just for friends and friends of friends versus everyone in the world.
Got it.
So, so it's helpful because I've had to step back a little bit and think, what is the bigger goal 6 months to a year, which is a little bit tougher.
Yeah, it is tougher, but it's the difference between looking at the sidewalk as you walk and looking at the place where you're going, right? Looking at the sidewalk, you actually have very little information, and it doesn't look like you're making any real progress, and you're not really sure where you are. If you're looking at the place that you're going, you see the difference. You can avoid the people on the sidewalk. You can cross the street because it's actually a much easier ride. So I definitely encourage you to really dive in and get as specific as you can about the long-term stuff. And catch and post it somewhere. If you're someone who gets singularly focused in the minutia, post the big goal somewhere so you see it all the time. There's no shame in re-exposing yourself as often as you need to the things that will keep you in action the way that you want to be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lenore. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and we are so grateful to have had this bonus session. I will be sharing the slides and the video recording with everybody later today. You have Lenore's email, so if you want to reach out to her, and maybe as you guys grow, she could be helpful to your business. But thank you so much, Lenore. Really, really appreciate your time here today.
Sure, it was great working with all of you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have offline. So thank you, Erica.